Hi, it's Katrina. What were the Romans doing in Greenland 2,000 years ago? And what's up with NASA discovering a parallel universe or the dragon found in Mongolia? Today, we are diving deep into these bizarre discoveries that could change history. Are you ready? The Roman Empire in Greenland? Want to know Rome's dirty little secret? 2,000 years ago, while toga-clad Romans were busy conquering continents, building aqueducts, and arguing in Latin about whose turn it was to clean the vomitorium, they were also unknowingly doing something truly spectacular. The Romans were leaving tiny metallic timestamps in Greenland's ice. Let me explain. What happens in Rome blows into Greenland. Evidence of Rome's historical mood swings can be found inside sheets of solid ice. It's even possible the Romans found Greenland 1,000 years before the Vikings. Scientists from the University of Oxford went full CSI on an ancient Greenland ice core, and guess what they found? Lead. Airborne lead pollution. And where did all of this lead pollution come from? From the Romans, of course. The lead was a byproduct of silver smelting, which Romans did in massive quantities to mint all those fabulous little coins with emperors' faces on them. Mining silver in Spain sent microscopic flecks of lead up into the atmosphere, and those particles traveled all the way to Greenland on the wind. Either that, or Romans made it all the way to Greenland and started smelting silver. But we haven't found proof of that yet. What's really amazing, guys, this is like actual magic, is that scientists can look at the levels of lead inside an ice core sample and pinpoint the rise and fall of the empire. It's like a record of Rome's greatest hits and biggest flops. For example, the first lead layer dates to 400 BC, which happened to be right when Rome arrived in Spain and started mining silver for their coins. Then levels spiked dramatically at the start of the First Punic War in 264 BC. War was costly, and Rome had to pay for mercenaries fighting on their behalf. In 100 BC, lead levels plummeted, probably because Rome was waging war in Spain and France, and things weren't going great, so the economy was in freefall. Then in 165 AD, there was a massive, massive drop. Do you happen to remember what else happened in 165? The Antonine Plague wiped out millions of people in Europe and made the economy do the ancient equivalent of unsubscribe. Less coin making, less silver smelting, less lead. And it's all recorded in the ice. Before you go shaming the Romans for polluting the air with their silver smelting, let's talk context. Their annual pollution footprint was about 1/1,000,000th of a gram per square meter, which is pretty much nothing. It was less than your average Roman sneeze. In comparison, ice core samples from Canada's Mount Logan show that between 1981 and 1998, lead levels were 50 times higher than anything the Romans ever did, and that was nearly 30 years ago. But does any of this mean that Rome physically went to Greenland? Scientists don't think so, but they can't rule it out. No lost Roman swords or coins with Nero's face on them have been found in the ice yet. Only this record of the Roman Empire's successful run at the game of civilization. Viking lumberjacks in Canada? This isn't a hoax. This is history. Deep in the mystical, moose-filled forest near Wawa, Ontario, a place that already sounds like a password to enter Valhalla, a tree toppled over in 2018. It exposed something that absolutely no one expected. No one, I tell you. The uprooted tree exposed a massive slab of rock covered in 255 ancient runes. This stone was buried in such a way that it's impossible it could have been a hoax. It was under a tree, for crying out loud. And amid the Viking runes was a detailed image of a Viking-style boat with 16 little figures on board. This is the Wawa runestone, the epicenter of a mystery where Nordic drama meets Canadian wilderness. And the question that everyone is asking is this: did Vikings arrive in Ontario in the ancient past? The answer seems to be yes. Ryan Primrose, co-director of the Ontario Centre for Archaeological Education, brought in the big Norse guns to investigate the stone after its discovery. And by guns, I mean Henrik Williams, runologist from Sweden's Uppsala University. Henrik was able to decode the runes. Turns out they spelled the Lord's Prayer in Old Swedish. It's a version dating to 1611, but Henrik thinks it was carved in the early 1800s. And the carving took a lot of work, probably a few weeks at least to finish. At this point, it feels a little depressing. Someone was presumably alone in the Canadian wilderness for long enough that they carved a prayer deep into a stone slab. Was it a shipwrecked Viking 500 years ago? Or was it a Swedish immigrant in the 19th century? As tempting as it is to scream Vikings and start shopping for horned helmets, which, fun fact, real Vikings never even wore, the evidence points not to medieval Norse explorers, but to 19th century Swedish workers employed by the Hudson's Bay Company. Experts think the runes were carved by lonely fur trappers in the wilderness. The only issue with this theory is the Viking-style boat with its 16 tiny crew members. That's something fur trappers wouldn't have carved next to the Lord's Prayer. It doesn't make any sense. But the boat is something an ancient Viking would have carved, possibly a Viking turned to Christianity by some brave missionaries. And since it's common knowledge Vikings were Newfoundland 1,000 years ago, it makes a lot of sense that they would have found their way to Ontario too. What are your thoughts on this baffling mystery? Let me know in the comments. The parting of the Red Sea. Scientists have thrown on their lab coats to answer questions we really want answered, like how did Moses part the Red Sea? I'll give you a hint. It wasn't magic, but scientists do think they have solved God's most famous miracle, and some people aren't very happy about it. The iconic moment where Moses parts the Red Sea is one of the biggest moments in the Bible. To put it in modern terms, it was like when Thanos snapped his fingers. And now, researchers say Mother Nature may have done the heavy lifting, not God. A little wind, a little luck, and Moses walked across the Red Sea like Jesus walked on water. According to a team at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, Moses may not have needed a divine miracle, just a really aggressive windstorm. Their computer simulation showed that 60-mile-per-hour winds, sustained overnight from just the right direction, could shove enough water aside to create a temporary land bridge about 3 miles wide. This may have been something that happened frequently enough that Moses knew it was coming, and so he may have led his people to the sea fully aware that it would part before him. And his people, seeing this, may have thought it was really an act of God. Traditionally, people have imagined this miracle happening in the Gulf of Aqaba, which is wide, deep, and impossible to cross without a boat or a scuba tank. It's nearly 3,000 feet deep. That's not parting the sea, that's parting the abyss. But more recent archaeological research points to the Gulf of Suez as the point where Moses and the Israelites crossed. It's a shallower, narrower body of water with a comparatively flat bottom. This spot is actually walkable if the timing's right. And now for the pièce de résistance, something you won't hear from the church anytime soon. In fact, what I'm about to tell you is something the church would rather remain buried in the forgotten halls of history. In 1789, Napoleon led his troops across the bottom of the Red Sea at low tide. Napoleon did it, which means that Moses could have done it too. On the way back, Napoleon almost got wiped out by a 10-foot-high wave, but they did make it. Maybe the most telling part of this mystery is that the Bible gives us clues as to what really happened. The Bible says a strong east wind blew all night, so scientists tested a strong east wind. Oceanographer Nathan Palder from Hebrew University found that a strong wind from the east could push the water far enough to expose the seabed, which makes you wonder if the Bible's authors knew what really happened, seeing as they included the part about the east wind. And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to SM Rayan and History Snob for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with me today. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out. Did NASA find a parallel universe in Antarctica? Yes, the internet rumor that just won't die. Like the McRib of pseudoscience, it lives rent-free in the minds of conspiracy theorists everywhere, and it goes a little something like this. NASA found a parallel universe in Antarctica where time runs backward. If you've seen this headline recently, your brain probably did a double take, and your inner sci-fi nerd screamed, "Finally, I can go back in time and stop myself from sending that photo to everyone in my contacts." But before you start packing for Antarctica in hopes of seeing a parallel reality, let's unpack what's really going on. In 2020, a bunch of highly skilled scientists were working with a very fancy balloon experiment in Antarctica. It was called the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, and it picked up some weird signals from neutrinos. Neutrinos are tiny subatomic particles that ghost through everything, including you right now. These neutrinos appear to be coming up from the Earth instead of down from space, which is not normal behavior. That's like finding a slice of pizza in your shoe. Not impossible, but why the hell is there pizza in your shoe? Some scientists suggested this might require a rethink of our current understanding of physics. One hypothesis was that this could be evidence of a CPT symmetric universe. That's a fancy way of saying mirror dimension, a universe that is a reflection of ours, where time moves in reverse. So the paper didn't outright say that NASA confirmed an alternate reality where everything happens backward and people age like Benjamin Button. It was more like the behavior of the neutrinos suggested they might be from a parallel universe. You know what though? That's good enough for me. If NASA scientists suspect a parallel universe exists and that it's oozing neutrinos into our universe, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. What about you? Do you believe in the multiverse, or are you a one universe kind of person? The Prince of Dragons. For too long, one dinosaur has been waiting in the shadows. Until now. Long before Jurassic Park made the T-Rex the superstar of the dinosaur world, there was Canculu mongoliensis, a dinosaur with a name so hard to pronounce it's no wonder it never became famous. K. mongoliensis was a mid-sized, sharp-toothed, long-snouted predator strutting through Cretaceous Mongolia like it owned the place 86 million years ago, give or take a few ice ages. This dino, whose name literally means dragon prince, may have been a critical stepping stone on the long evolutionary staircase that led to the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex. If T-Rex is the king, Kankuulu was the royal teenager still figuring things out. This newly revealed dino is rewriting the history of big dinosaurs. T-Rex was a 40-foot meat-powered monster truck. Kankulu was a spry 13-foot boxer weighing in at 1,600 pounds. That's roughly the size of a modern hippo, but on two legs, and teeth like your one friend who never went to the dentist. Whereas T-Rex had bone-crushing jaws built for demolishing Triceratops ribs, Kankulu rocked slender, steak-knife teeth designed for slicing smaller prey into prehistoric sashimi. Think of it as the difference between a sledgehammer and a katana. According to Dr. Darla Zelenitsky from the University of Calgary, Kankulu hadn't quite leveled up to king status yet. It was still a prince, she said, which means it was the Simba of tyrannosaurs, just waiting one day to evolve into the king of dinosaurs. But wait up, how did scientists figure all of this out? The fossils of two individuals were originally found in the 1970s, but they were put in the we'll get to that later pile. Until recently, I'm sure we can all relate with a little bit of procrastination. These fossils included parts of the skull, arms, legs, tail, and spine. Enough pieces to Frankenstein together a decent picture of this long-snouted, swift-footed predator. And when researchers such as Jared Voris, study lead author and PhD student, took a closer look, they realized this was no ordinary dino. The fossils had all the makings of a tyrannosaur ancestor, but lacked some of the signature tyrannosaur features. For instance, its snout bone was hollow, not T-Rex-style chunky. Additional research has shown that about 85 million years ago, these tyrannosaur ancestors pulled a bold move by crossing a land bridge from Asia to North America, sort of like how ancient humans crossed the Bering Strait. Once in North America, they bulked up, got meaner, and evolved into apex predators like Albertosaurus, Daspletosaurus, and eventually everyone's favorite hero of the Cretaceous, the almighty T-Rex. While the Mongolian murder lizard isn't T-Rex's dad, it is its forebearer. This ferocious little beast, well, little as in 13 feet tall, went on an epic journey to a new world, beefed up, and ultimately evolved into the greatest predator ever known. The people who escaped Pompeii. You've seen it in every disaster movie and every dramatic slow-mo volcano montage. The volcano erupts, everyone turns into statues of ash, and the credits roll. End of story, right? Wrong. In a shocking turn of events, it turns out not everyone in Pompeii was killed. There were miraculous survivors. On the day of August 24th, 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius uncorked itself and went full beast mode. It blasted more than 3 cubic cubic miles of ash, rock, and volcanic rage into the sky. It rained fire for over 18 straight hours, which must have really sucked for the people of Pompeii. Ever been stuck in a rainstorm? Now turn the rain into fire and then let me know how you're doing. Pompeii and Herculaneum, two coastal Roman cities near Naples, got absolutely steamrolled. For centuries, the narrative was grim. Archaeologists assumed that everyone in both cities perished and were frozen in time like the world's most horrifying wax museum. But archaeologist Stephen L. Tuck wasn't buying the mainstream narrative. He thought some people must have escaped. So he channeled his inner Sherlock Holmes and started scanning ancient Roman records, tombstones, graffiti, and inscriptions looking for evidence of escapees. After 8 years and tens of thousands of Roman names later, he found something astonishing. Stephen identified over 200 survivors scattered across 12 cities. These were people who got out of Pompeii and made it to safety while everyone else was being melted down like they were made of chocolate. Some survivors even thrived. Take the Celtilius family, for example. They hightailed it to Ostia, a major Roman port city. There, they built a temple to Serapis, the Egyptian god who wore a basket of wheat like a hat. He was kind of a fashion icon. The Celtilius family also built a massive tomb complex and started marrying into other survivor families, like the Munatiuses. They must have known each other from Pompeii and married to keep the survivors together. Then there's Aulus Ambrosius, a Pompeian garum merchant, aka the king of Roman fish sauce. After fleeing to Puteoli, modern-day Pozzuoli, he restarted the family business. He and his wife were so proud of their new start, they named their kid Puteolanus, or the guy from Puteoli. That's one way to try and befriend the neighbors. Sadly, not every story was Roman rags to riches. Fabia Secundina, whose family once hustled fine wine in Pompeii, ended up marrying Aquarius the Retiarius, a gladiator with a trident and a short expiration date. He died at just 25, and she was left broke in Puteoli, not to mention the PTSD from escaping hell on earth. And then there were the Aviani, Attili, and Mazzuri families, who settled in the modest town of Nuceria, about 10 miles east of Pompeii. These were working-class survivors who lost everything and had to rebuild from scratch. There is a touching twist, though. Records show that the Mazzuri family took in a foster child named Avianius Felicio. This was extremely rare in Roman times. The family's act of kindness tells us survivors were caring for each other, even when they had almost nothing. Finding out there were survivors of Pompeii is one thing, because it really does change history. But uncovering all of these little personal stories is just the icing on the cake, bringing this horrific disaster to life in a way that has never been seen before. History's first psychic spy. Let's talk about psychic powers, because why the heck not? In the year 1555, the vibe could be summed up in 3 words: plague, alchemy, and powdered wigs. Okay, 4 words. During this era of terror and magic, a man named Michel de Nostradam was sitting at his candlelit desk in France, scribbling out cryptic poems that would make your horoscope feel like a detailed weather forecast. You know him as Nostradamus. He's been called a prophet, a medieval wizard, and a remote viewer. But who was he really? And how have his prophecies changed history? Is it possible to see into the future? Born in 1503, Nostradamus was a French physician, a pharmacist, and a lover of quatrains. He wrote all his predictions as quatrains, and they are certainly something. Each one is cryptic and packed full of metaphors so obscure they make your ex's text seem emotionally stable. You could easily call him a quack, if not for the fact that so many of his predictions have come true. Hitler? Check. The Great Fire of London? Check, check. 9/11? Triple check. Here's the quatrain that supposedly predicts the rise of Hitler and the Third Reich. From the depths of the west of Europe, a young child will be born of poor people. He who by his tongue will seduce a great troop. His fame will increase towards the realm of the East. Okay, Nostradamus, that's spooky specific. Poor European kid, master of evil speeches, famous in the East. Sounds a lot like someone who had a front row seat to World War II. But if Nostradamus really did predict Hitler and all this other stuff, how did he do it? The number one theory right now is that Nostradamus was a remote viewer. He may have been able to see into the future simply by closing his eyes and letting his spirit slip out of his body. It's something that people are still doing right now. Modern remote viewers often describe what they see as blurry, fragmented images, like trying to stream Netflix on a one-bar hotel Wi-Fi. Maybe Nostradamus was catching glimpses of future events the same way, but with his internal Wi-Fi cranked up to full bars. But why the cryptic prophecies then? His quatrains read like what a confused time traveler might say after seeing a car explode and trying to explain it to someone in the 1500s. If Nostradamus wasn't a mystic prophet blessed by angels, the remote viewer theory makes a weird amount of sense. It lines up with everything from the vagueness of his writing to the bizarre specificity of some of the events he predicted. It also means we can stop treating Nostradamus like some spooky wizard and start thinking of him more like a confused, time-glitched redditor in a poet's robe. Do you trust any Nostradamus predictions that might help us avoid a future disaster? If you do, tell me about them in the comments. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Prehistoric PowerPoint or world's first rage tweet? The accepted history of language is apparently wrong. Thousands of years before emojis, hashtags, and your aunt's unhinged Facebook posts, someone in what is now Romania grabbed some clay, made 3 small tablets, scratched a bunch of mysterious symbols into them, and called it a day. Fast forward to 1961, archaeologist Nicolae Vlasa stumbled onto these ancient doodles during a dig in Tartaria, and suddenly, everything Nicolae thought he knew about the origins of writing got thrown into the metaphorical bonfire. What if I told you the Sumerians weren't the first ones to create language? What if I were to tell you that language started in Eastern Europe about 1,000 years before it was invented in Mesopotamia? Would you freak out? Because the Tartaria tablets are proof that the Sumerians were late to the language party. Found buried alongside 26 figurines, a shell bracelet, and some damaged human bones, the Tartaria tablets are 3 tiny slabs of unbaked clay covered in symbols from 5300 BC. Behind closed doors, academics are currently in a heated debate over these symbols. Some experts believe them to be true writing, just like our English alphabet. The other team say that the symbols are just symbols, nothing more than fancy scribbles, or maybe ancient attempts at winning a Neolithic art contest, judged by very confused goats. The tablets are linked to the Turdas Vinca culture, a Neolithic civilization that flourished between 4500 and 3700 BC across what is now Romania, Serbia, Bulgaria, and more. They were peaceful farming folk, possibly with the first book club in history. Radiocarbon dating confirmed their tablets to be way older than anything from Sumerian cities like Uruk or Gem Nasser, where the earliest texts are dated to around 3300 BC. In other words, the people of Tartaria were ahead of their time. Their tablets are the oldest known candidate for writing on the planet. As you can imagine, this is huge news. You're not going to see it on your local news station because that's for politics and kittens stuck in trees. But in the world of archaeology, this is massive. Europeans may have invented language, something that nobody had on their ancient revelations bingo card for 2025. History's first selfie? The first artist wasn't who you think it was. Beneath the shadow of the ancient Spanish hills near Segovia, in an ancient rock shelter, something wild happened. In the darkness, a Neanderthal knelt in front of a rock wall and pressed their finger to it. What the Neanderthal left was a single red ochre smudge 43,000 years ago. At first glance, it just seems to be a boring smudge, but scientists suspect it might actually be the world's first selfie. The discovery of this little dot in 2022 by archaeologist David Alvarez might have just rewritten the whole history of art. Because up until now, it was generally assumed that only Homo sapiens made artwork. Now it's clear that Neanderthals did too. But is this really a selfie? After forensic testing, the red dot was confirmed to be ochre pigment. Even more impressive was when scientists revealed the fingerprint. Imagine pressing your thumb to some wet clay. Your fingerprint would be stuck to it. The same thing happened with the Neanderthal and their drop of pigment. Scientists identified it as the fingerprint of an adult male. The print is in the middle of a rock that looks sort of like a human face. It appears the Neanderthals saw the face in the stone's natural cracks and crevices and placed a red dot where the nose would be. Boom! First abstract portrait. Take that, Picasso! Then came an even bigger discovery. David and his team of experts concluded the rock was hauled to the cavern a couple miles from the Eresma River. That means it wasn't just lying around. Someone looked at this rock, saw a human face, and carried it home like it was the last pack of toilet paper during a pandemic. This changes everything scientists know about the origin of art, along with the creativity skills of Neanderthals. An ancient skeleton changes the history of Christianity. A tiny object just forced a massive rethink on Jesus and his earliest followers. Buried beneath centuries of dirt, ash, and German suburbia, a small silver amulet sat quietly tucked under a dead guy's jaw for nearly 1,800 years. Then, in 2018, archaeologists digging up the ancient Roman town of Nida, modern-day Frankfurt am Main, found it in a grave dating back to 230 AD. At first, it just looked like a tiny metal tube, but oh man, was this thing packing secrets. In May 2024, researchers finally cracked the amulet's ancient code using high-tech scans. Suddenly, they weren't just holding a Roman accessory, they were holding a time bomb for biblical history. The amulet, also called a phylactery, was a sort of ancient security system. It was a magical container filled with text or objects meant to ward off evil, like a wearable antivirus. Most of these amulets were spiritual mashups, some Judaism, a pinch of paganism, maybe a little something from that one weird temple on the corner. But this one? This amulet was all Christianity, 100%. No pagan cameos, no Jewish symbols, just a fully committed Jesus fan club. Scholars say this is the earliest confirmed evidence of pure Christianity north of the Alps. And honestly, it kind of blindsided the historical community. This was like finding out your grandfather fought on that side of the war, and suddenly the whole family history needs a little bit of adjusting. The Frankfurt inscription is a scientific sensation, said the city's mayor, Mike Joseph, and that's putting it mildly. Thanks, Mike. Now for the translation. Scientists cracked the amulet open virtually because unrolling a 1,800-year-old silver foil by hand is like trying to unwrap a sandwich made of cobwebs. This wafer-thin sliver of script revealed references to Jesus, St. Titus, who was the disciple of Paul the Apostle, and a line that slapped theologians right in the forehead. One line of text reads, "Holy, holy, holy." That liturgical phrase wasn't supposed to show up in Christian texts until a century later. Holy, holy, holy was something of a Christian catchphrase in the Dark Ages. Finding the phrase in an amulet scroll from less than 200 years after Christ's death should be impossible. But here we are. Even stranger is that the whole thing is written in Latin. Normally, religious scrolls from this era were written in Greek or Hebrew. This guy went full Rome. Bold move for a time when Christianity was still edgy enough to get you jailed or, executed. What scholars want to know now is who wore this secret Jesus amulet. And unfortunately, they have no idea. They know nothing about the man found buried with the trinket, other than that he was a committed Christian at a time when doing so publicly was, let's say, ill-advised. The amulet's secret script remained unreadable for years because it was too fragile to touch. Fortunately, the team at the Leibniz Center for Archaeology in Germany had a high-resolution CT scanner handy. Dr. Ivan Kalandra is the imaging wizard who digitally unrolled the thing in 3D, because apparently we live in the future now. Then came Marcus Goltz from Goethe University, who teamed up with other experts to translate the phrases. It was thanks to these low-key geniuses that Christianity has forever been altered, even if it is only a small change. Until now, actual physical evidence of Christianity north of the Alps only went back as far as the 4th century AD. It didn't look like Christianity had spread that far north, but now it looks like die-hard Christians were indeed in Northern Europe 100 years earlier. Thanks for watching! What was your favorite discovery from today's video? And what would you like to see more about in the future? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!